Hi, everybody. Happy Halloween. Boy, do I have a special show planned for you today. We are going to be talking with a gal who's a paranormal researcher in San Diego. Her name is Nicole Strickland, and she started a society there, and she researches paranormal phenomena from all over the world. So as you know, I have lots of questions always, but I really have a bunch of them for her. So I want to find out what's the difference between a spirit and a ghost, in her opinion. What are their research methodologies? Of course, I want to hear about some of the cases on which she's worked and lots of other questions that go along the lines of what's really happening and does she believe in an afterlife? I guess she does if she's doing this research. So it should be really fun to talk to her. Remember to like and subscribe, share this with your friends and family, and leave a comment. I love to hear what you think about our conversation and the show and all of those goodies. So let's talk to Nicole and see what she has to tell us. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today, Nicole. I'm really excited to talk with you, and I'm really excited that this worked out, that we're going to release this on Halloween. How good is that as far as synchronicity goes?
There you go. I was just going to say synchronicity, great minds think alike. Thank you so much, Julie, for having me on today. So perfect timing, right?
I know. When we were emailing back and forth, and we always release our interview shows on Tuesdays, and I thought, and Halloween's on Tuesday this year, so perfect. No coincidences in life. Absolutely. Right. All right, let's just get into it. I have so many questions for you. This is going to be fun.
Oh boy.
Are spirits and ghosts real?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this question's been asked I don't know how many times, but yes, I do believe they are real. Absolutely. Now, if you want a longer response of, okay, there's, ghosts and spirits, earthbounds, also known as ghosts and spirits. And then, of course, with residual type of energy. When I do my classes or presentations, I like to describe it as almost like a psychic / emotional imprint on the environment. So it's not technically an intelligence or an intelligent earthbound or spirit per se, but it's a heightened sense of emotion that is imprinted on an environment due to like a violent death, for example, due to any sort of heightened sort of emotion. So I like to tell people, like, for example, Gettysburg Battlefield. Let's assuming you're going there and you're not seeing a reenactment there. You're just there for the day. There's no reenactment, and you hear a phantom cannon blasting off in the distance, and you ask the people around, there's no documentation for it. That could be classified as a residual type of imprint. But getting toward intelligent energies, whether it's an earthbound or spirit, absolutely. And I've encountered many of them throughout my life. So
interesting about the imprint, because actually a chapter in my angelic attendance book, I talk about that I'm in a building and it was a makeshift morgue. And it was before the turn of the 20th century.
Right.
And there had been a train wreck, and a lot of the spirits were dressed in their Sunday best. And then there were spirits there that were dressed in overalls with shovels and picks and things like that. And I was able to communicate with those spirits and get all kinds of interesting information from them, much of which we were able to corroborate with historic online information.
That's phenomenal. And you said history. So I've even said this in my books, history and the paranormal are best friends with a dear kinship. You really can't have one without the other. So it's fascinating to have all these different layers of energies from different time periods and different cultures, and you can communicate and contact them. It's just utterly fascinating.
That's what I see too in my mind's eye, Nicole, when I do what I call past life scans.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get where it was, when it was. I'll be able to communicate with the person's spirit when they were living in that past life.
Right.
And it's fascinating, again, the information that we can corroborate with historic documents that are out there. So is it kind of like when there's an archaeological dig and they'll see that there was a city and then they dig further and then there was another older city beneath it and then another older city beneath it? That thought is just coming into my head, almost like it's layers of history on top of one another.
Absolutely. And it's one of those reasons why paranormal researchers, paranormal investigators, there's all these facets that we need to look at. We need to really examine, the various historical layers, looking into how genealogy may play into it or the environment, certain types of geology like limestone or quartz, for example, even archaeology. Finding certain bits and pieces of buildings or whatnot can really help to tell a story of what's going on. So that's what I try to do in my research, is look at all those angles and see if we can fit the puzzles together.
So I'm going off and going down a rabbit hole here for a second based on something that you just mentioned, and that is limestone, quartz, marble, those different kinds, slate, those different kinds of stones. What does that depict, or what kind of information does that give you?
I don't think we absolutely, from a science perspective, can really explain how the properties in limestone or quartz or certain types of gems or crystals can do this, but they're thought to retain and I guess retain, but also spread a spiritual type of energy. So almost being like a transmitter and a receiver of different types of energies. So, you can get into some of the properties. And again, science, I don't think, can really completely understand it because there may be some sort of metaphysical component there too. But it is said that these types of stones can really be almost like a capacitor for spirits to manifest and to communicate. And an example of this is the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, and of course other places as well. But it's thought that it sits on this piezoelectric sort of property where you have this limestone and you have this quartz and whatnot. And it's said too that some of the experiences that people have are actual residual types of snapshots from its historical heyday. So it goes back into, for a science perspective, the electrical types of properties of certain stones or crystals or rock that can really help us out when we communicate with energy. So it's something that I would love to learn more on, because I think there's a lot more there that we haven't uncovered. So,
well, obviously metals too.
Metals, absolutely.
What's coming to mind is my son Jonathan's best friend bought his wife's engagement ring in like one of those Facebook markets, neighborhood market kind of a thing.
Right.
And got a great deal on it. And so he brought it to me to clear out the energy of the previous owner before he gave it to his girlfriend, soon to be his fiance.
Right, yeah.
It was wild, Nicole. When I held it in my hand, I was getting this whole big scene. It was like I was watching a little mini movie of the bride, the woman who wore it, her name, her husband's name, that kind of stuff, what happened, why she was selling the ring. It was not a good reason. I mean, it was a good reason for her to sell it, but he had been unfaithful and she was divorcing him, and there was a lot of anger and betrayal and all that kind of stuff. And so Jonathan's best friend, who of course has been around me since he was a little boy, and so this stuff is just normal to them,
of course.
And
right.
So he's like, I got to take that to Miss Julie and get her to clear out the woo-woo.
Right, exactly. I love that word, woo-woo, right? But there you go.
There's woo-woo is.
residual type of leftover energy. And, divining rods and dowsing rods I use as an adjunct to other methodologies as well. And I prefer copper just because of that metal aspect. And it's my belief that these rods, or even if you're using pendulums, I use those too, they almost attune themselves to your energy. And I've had my rods for years. And so it's interesting when I work with other rods, they're not as effective as the ones that I use. And so I think they just attune to your energy. So it's so fascinating.
I agree.
All of it is just so fascinating.
All interconnected, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And interesting, is copper harder than gold or silver? Because gold and silver is more easily manipulated. I'm thinking of jewelry, the higher the carat, the softer the metal.
I've heard that too. In terms of its conductive properties, I think copper's the second highest. I could be wrong on that, but that's another reason. I mean, people use brass. You can make divining rods out of wood sticks if you want, or wire hangers. I just prefer the copper just for that reason, for its conductive properties. And the longer they are, the more sensitive. You've probably heard that as well. So
I'm really not familiar with anything to do with divining rods. I've seen pendulums used, but no, I haven't. I'm not familiar with that at all. So that's fascinating. How'd you get interested in all things paranormal?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is a question I try so hard to condense because I could just be talking about this for an hour straight. So I like to think that I was born into the field. I know that sounds hokey and I know that sounds woo-woo in a way, but my interests, and I've had authentic interests in communicating with the other side since I was a very little girl, I would say about 3 or 4 years old, going back to, my infancy per se, and just always had this curiosity about what happens to us when we pass on. But yet I also had a lot of profound experiences that I can remember far back as 3 and 4 years old. And so I was one of those kids, even growing up into middle school and high school, that I would get my hands on any sort of book or article pertaining to the paranormal and the afterlife. The culminating experience for me was when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Arizona. It was my senior year, and my mom's mom, Helen Lopinto, she passed away. And what's interesting is she called me the night before she passed. And here I was in Tucson, Arizona, and she was here in San Diego. And she asked me, and she used to worry a lot when she was alive. And she just said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, of course I am, Grandma. I'm just really busy with school and all of that." I was wondering why she would ask me that. I didn't really ponder on it too much. Now I know, or I think I know after she passed, why she did that. She was making her rounds with the family, trying to make sure they were okay, because I think she was ready to pass. So I talked with her for about maybe 15, 20 minutes, and this was October 24th. And then the following day, in the afternoon, I get a call from my mom, her daughter, of course, and I knew by the tone of my mom's voice that something wasn't right. And I said, "Okay, Mom, what's going on?" And she said, with some tears in her eyes, she said, "Nicole, I love you so much. I want to let you know that I love you, but Grandma passed away early in the morning." So I was very, very close with my grandmother. So I got the next flight out from Tucson, came to San Diego, spent some time with the family for a few days. And then when I got back to Tucson, I started having these odd experiences in my apartment that I did not encounter prior to her passing. At first, I chucked them off to, well, I'm in an apartment setting. It's my neighbors. It's vibration. Didn't really even think paranormal. Started off with certain doorknobs rattling by themselves. Then the following night, I was sitting on my bed and I felt a disembodied hand caress my face. That's when I connected the dots and I thought, okay, could this be Helen trying to communicate? I didn't really think too much of it. A couple of days later, again, I was, I think, on my laptop doing a paper or something like that, when all of a sudden my left peripheral vision, when I looked, there was my grandmother, full-bodied, looked as though she had a spotlight from behind. So she had this whitish halo. She was wearing one of her favorite house dresses. She didn't say anything. She had a slight smile on her face. and then she faded away. The whole experience seemed to play out in slow motion, in color, and it seemed to last for at least a second or two, and that's pretty long for that type of encounter. And then she faded, and I had this very profound residual sense of peace and love after. And that's when I connected the other experiences I was having, and that's when I put it all together. So I called my mom up, shared with her what happened, and so her and I talked openly to Helen, letting her know that the family's okay. She's free to move on, be at peace wherever that is, and the experience has stopped. But it was just so profound, so authentic for me, and that's actually what catapulted me out of the lab, so to speak, and getting out into the research field. And that's when I started to research the paranormal on a serious level. So I really credit her for that experience.
Oh, what a gift she gave you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that you and your mom spoke with her after she passed. So do you come from a spiritual family? Is this something that you'd encountered before? And when you finally started talking about it, was it accepted, or did they think you were nuts?
Yeah, no. Actually, both sides of my family are very, very open to what I do. And I was actually, I don't practice it anymore, but I was baptized Catholic, went to Catholic school. But even with that said, both sides of my family are very open to it. My grandmother was highly sensitive. She used to say that she was born with a veil over her head. My mom is too. And of course, it passed down to me as well. I think there's some on my dad's side. So I've been very, very intuitive my entire life. For me, I keep it low profile. It's just a personal choice. But I do use that, of course, in my work and everyday life.
A veil over her head, were they cull babies? Did they have the part of the amniotic sac over their head? That's a thing. And those babies are said to be very intuitive.
Yes, my mom actually, it's funny because I was talking to her about this about a month ago, and she shared that with me. So that is a fact. Yes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a real thing.
She would know when something's wrong. She would call and say, "What's the matter?" And there would be no way of her knowing. So she was highly, highly intuitive and very good in that sense. So I wish I knew her more as an adult now because, the conversations we would have if she was still alive. But she does communicate with me. I can feel her when she's around. She does make her visits every now and then. So yeah, she's
talking
within my
about your
heart.
mom or your grandmother?
My grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. My
your
mom's still alive.
Living?
Yeah. My mom's still alive. So
good.
She's a nurse.
I too was raised Catholic, and I think the Catholics do a really good job of getting us ready for this spirit communication and this spirit interest with the guardian angels and the saints and the Holy Spirit and all of that. And I think a lot of the mediums and psychics and people who are in this field were raised Catholic. I would say an inordinate amount of us were raised Catholic. So I go back to that foundation is laid versus somebody that's never heard of this stuff.
Right.
And they're starting from square zero. We've already kind of been catapulted off the platform and been taught to believe in it since we were little.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're right on that too, because I've talked to a lot of people who also have that Catholic background. As an adult, I don't really practice a religion per se, but I'm more spiritual. If anything, I'm a spiritualist. But baptized Catholic when I was young, all of that, went to Catholic school. So yeah, it does prepare you a little bit for this type of work. That's an astute way of thinking about it for sure.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, Pope Francis came out with a papal bull. I don't know if you've read it in 2016. Have you read it? You know what I'm talking about?
I read a little article on it. Yep.
To have his pastors welcome psychic mediums and healers because they're doing the work of the Holy Spirit. And my parish and many churches of all denominations and synagogues around the country give my book to every family that comes in to plan a funeral.
Oh, that's great.
And Yeah, and it talks about what happens as we're dying and how we're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones,
Oh,
which is what
absolutely.
the prayer in Paradisum's all about. And I know you coming from a Catholic background, Catholic funerals, that's a prayer that's said at every Catholic funeral, that
Yes.
the angels and your loved ones will greet you and lead you into paradise. And so I think that's fascinating
It
as well.
is.
So tell us about the San Diego Paranormal Research Society. Tell
Oh,
us,
sure.
did you found it? Tell us about your research methodologies. And a little bit later, I want to talk to you about some of the cases that have been, more interesting and ones that have really stuck in your mind. So first, tell us about why you founded that society, and tell us about it, and tell us about your research methodologies.
So absolutely. So I will preface this by saying that I've worked with different paranormal research teams in Southern California, but after getting my hands wet, if you will, I had this desire to form my own team, just because I had a vision of what I wanted for it. And so I developed and founded the San Diego Paranormal Research Society in 2009. And we primarily concentrate on investigations, paranormal investigations and case studies. There's a little bit of a difference there. An investigation is more or less you get one night to investigate a property and that's it. A case study is where, and this is highly beneficial, where you get to spend a certain amount of time there, several weeks, several months, and you get more of an idea of what's going on. So we concentrate on those types of cases, and primarily in San Diego County. We do go up to LA and even out of state, or I sometimes go out of state because I'm the California coordinator for the Ghost Research Society as well, in Chicago, Illinois. So the team, we're not, and I will say this, no offense to anyone who has the term ghost hunters in their team title. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm more or less talking about the psychological mindset, the goals and the intentions of our team. So we're not thrill seekers. We're not out to hunt the dead per se. We are legitimately into researching the unknown. And as I mentioned before, looking at those other supplemental areas. So historical research, genealogy, archaeology, uh, uh, even getting into all the different eyewitness interviews and so forth, all looking at all those facets when we do our investigation or case study. So, and then also we offer classes, various types of classes. So let's say you want to learn how to, the routes of being a paranormal investigator. We have courses for that. And then of course, I love to present, and I have several this month actually. And I have about, I think 14 or 15 different presentation topics that cover various aspects of the paranormal field. And you can go on my website, authorNicoleStrickland.com, to see those. So we're an educational sort of team as well as going out and investigating the unknown. And we do approach our work both with a metaphysical mindset and with a science sort of mindset. I feel it gives a more holistic view of what may be going on. Some teams are strictly intuitive, and that's fine. Some teams strictly adhere to more of the tangible, factual data they can get with just scientific type of methodology. But we like to combine the two and all of that. So it is a lot of fun, and I'm very proud that we've become one of San Diego's leading teams, which is, we've worked hard for that. And so it's really been a learning experience and a lot of fun in the process of doing that. So, and we've had many different types of cases that stick out. You can always learn something new on a case, some prominent historical ones as well. I don't know if there's certain ones you wanted me to talk about, or just share what I feel is the most popular that we've done, or the most profound. It's up to you.
Let's do that a little bit later in our conversation, because I want to stay on the topic of, it sounds like there's several
methodologies,
organizations and groups that are doing this.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Are they nonprofit organizations? Are they for profit? Are they just a group of people that get together to do something fun? Who calls on you for help? How do you find the cases?
Oh, okay. Getting more
things
into
like
that.
that.
Sure. Yeah. So most teams, I think, are more nonprofit. They may charge for, let's say they're going in to doing a presentation. They may charge for that. But most teams, I would say 98%, even higher, do not charge for investigations just because it's thought. It's a general collective view that why do we charge for something that isn't necessarily proven or something that we can't tangibly say either way. So most teams don't charge. They might accept donations. Or if like in my case, if they go to an event and they sell books, of course, they're going to charge for that. But I'm strictly speaking on investigations. Usually we don't. Sometimes, whether it's a museum curator or a homeowner, they might give a little donation for gas, things of that nature. But we're very, strict in how we do our methodologies and approach our studies. So again, there's the ghost hunter sort of thrill seeker route, and then there's more down the line of the academic sorts of paranormal research. And I know we can touch upon methodologies later on. What was it that you wanted to hear of again? Because I'm going off tangent. You just mentioned something. I want to make sure I don't forget that.
About the methodologies.
Okay.
And I want to hear the case studies a little bit later, but I'm interested in, do you take electronic equipment in there?
Right.
Do you research, like if you're researching some medical, you're going on PubMed or you're going on someplace like that. I mean, is there a reference site that's kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of research that's been done that you can access? Is there a cooperative between different groups when you figure out something? I'm interested in what your research methodologies are.
Perfect. Yes. So it's my wish as well as many others to have one general foundational site that has a lot of compiled research from various locations. Sadly, that doesn't really exist. It's funny because I was just talking about this on another show. We were talking about the idea of having something like that. But every team is different. Some teams don't like to collaborate. I'm seeing that more now, though. So I do collaborate with other researchers as long as their intent matches the goals and objectives of the team, of course. And methodology-wise, and again, some are mainly intuitive and approach it from more of a psychic channeling. Others are mainly interested in using various different types of electronic technical gadgets. We blend the two. So we'll do a lot of audio experimentation. So electronic voice phenomena type of experimentation. Most people know this, but an EVP is a voice that you don't hear at the time of recording that may be captured on a recording device, whether it's your phone or a fancy Tascam or Zoom recorder. And then other times you may, during an audio session, and we like to make it more discussion-based, not like an interrogative type of interview. So when we do that, you may hear what we call a disembodied voice or an audible voice phenomenon, and that's something that we hear with our naked ear that may be captured on a recording device. With EVPs, we don't hear live. We only hear when we review back. There's also a methodology which is a close cousin to EVP work, which is instrumental transcommunication, coined in 1971 by Dr. Ernst Minkowski. And it's basic, it's two-way live communication between us and the afterlife, or us and a spiritual being that we're trying to communicate with. So it's thought, it's not proven, it's thought that these ghost boxes, spirit boxes that scan the AM and FM bands of a radio at a very, very, very high rate, it's thought that energies can use the electronic frequency of the device to formulate words or sentences. And so what we look for in that type of research is we're looking for responses or words that correlate with the property's history. Do they correlate with the questions we're asking, or with maybe it's a homeowner that joined us on an investigation, and maybe they say that homeowner's name. I don't know, but could anything that's very precise and easy to hear, but has some sort of relevancy to the property that we're investigating. And then, of course, spirit photography. Many people use the IR, DVR surveillance cameras to monitor the rooms, or you can set up static cameras, whether it's full spectrum or infrared. It's thought that it's theorized, I should say, that ghosts and spirits are easily seen in the near infrared or infrared spectrum. So that's why we employ these various types of gadgets. And then, of course, let's see here. There's trigger objects. Many people will employ the Singapore theory, kind of enticing energies from a certain time period. So using trigger objects, various different types of recording devices I forgot to mention. So in addition to the spirit box or ghost box, you can use your phone. Some people just use their phones and they have great evidence. Or you can get like a cheaper little digital recorder, or you can get the more fancier Tascam and Zooms, or you can use analog. A lot of people don't use analog just because it's more time consuming, but it's thought that with the magnetic tape and the tapes, that it's thought that energies can maybe emulsify their voice or sound on those tapes. So there's all kinds of different methodologies, and what I call adjunct, and that's getting into metaphysical. So using certain crystals to maybe amplify the space, or act as a metaphysical battery to allow spirits to communicate, or maybe using divining rods in addition to those that are asking questions during an audio segment. You may want someone doing a divining rod segment. You'd be surprised. You can get corroborations. You can get something that is said and captured on an audio recorder that matches how the rods move. So it's blending all of those types of techniques. So, and every team's different. Every team is different, but those are some of the common methodologies that we employ.
All right, let's unpack this because I got a bunch of questions. Stuff that you just said.
I actually tried to condense it because I'm sure. I'll go off on a tangent.
Good job on the overview. First of all, the EVP is electronic voice phenomenon, correct?
Yeah, phenomena plural. Yes, EVP.
Phenomena, and what you do is you have like a tape recorder playing while you're talking with the spirit. So if you're in somebody's house and they're saying somebody's screwing with our lights, or they're moving stuff around or whatever, what do? Do you go in and say, "Hey, who's messing with the lights?" Or
you know what? There's a whole. Let's take that example. So it's best to use more than one recorder, at least 2, if not 3, because there can be a situation where, let's say, 1 or 2 capture something and the other does not. But if we're going into a home and we're going to investigate that night, we have our permission form and liability waiver signed. We have permission by the family to be there. We'll set up and all of that. And a lot of teams, including us, will have a recorder running during setup because you can get some responses during that time. But let's say we're about to start an EVP session. It's my opinion on this to not just hit record and start asking questions. We usually set the tone. And so there's like an opening statement. It goes like this. Hi, this is Nicole Strickland and Ali Schreiber and Eric, and we're here at, state the name of the place. We're going to attempt a spirit communication session, EVP session in the living room. We want to let the energies know that we come with respect. We come as friends. You don't have to communicate with us, but we'd strongly encourage it. We're here to get to learn about you and in the history and the story of this location, blah, blah, blah. And we also let them know this. We'll say, just in case you are speaking to us and we're not responding to you, don't think it's because we're ignoring you. Sometimes it is hard for us to hear with our naked ear, with our ears. That's why we have these various devices or gadgets or contraptions set around. If you can see, you might see that they have either a red or a green light, blah, blah, blah. And then we set the tone with that. And then we start our questions stating the time, investigators' names, just to identify vocalizations, the location, and the location where we're at in the property. If it's a living room, state that. If it's a kitchen, state that. And then, of course, like I said, the time, and then we start asking questions. And then we usually like to leave a good 10 seconds, sometimes more, in between each question, because sometimes it takes a little longer for energies to answer. So it's a whole drawn out sort of experience. And then, of course, what I didn't mention before is the environmental monitoring aspect of it. So the different theories of the electromagnetic frequency or the EM spectrum, it's thought that ghosts can manipulate that spectrum, but also places that have very high amounts of EMF can also serve as a nice foundation for paranormal types of activity. Cold drops even. So that's why we have ambient temperature sensors, because in many situations, someone may experience a drop in the temperature really quickly. And this feels like as if you've walked into a refrigerator or freezer. You're going to feel freezing maybe for a second or two, and then it goes away. But you'd be surprised, maybe an EVP is captured right at that same time. So whenever you can get a personal type of experience, whether it's what I call an objective type of experience, whether, let's say, you're seeing a shadow figure, you're seeing a ghost, or a subjective, you're feeling the emotion of maybe a spirit or an energy, jot that down, note that down. We try to have investigators keep the subjective notes private until after the investigation, and then we share because, of course, power of suggestion and bias and stuff. But if it's something that you're seeing, state that. Say, oh my gosh, I just saw an apparition in that corner. You'd be surprised that the personal experience matches an EVP, for example, and that's two pieces of corroboration. So it's a whole procedure. Other types of environmental monitoring as well. Radiation, even there can be disruptions in the ions in the air or the radiation. So environmental monitoring is important, but I wouldn't use that because it just by itself. Because what is a random EMF spike really going to tell you? Not much. But if you put it all together and try to look at all the methodologies that you're using and try to piece together the puzzle, that's what we try to do. So
I have a gal who took my class. She's a graduate of my angelic attendant training, and she does the EVP work as well. And interestingly enough, Nicole, she's a choir director at a high school.
Interesting.
She's in charge of the music program at a high school. And yes, very much so. Yes. But she lost her son when he was 10.
Oh my gosh.
And so she talks to him on the EVPs, and I've heard it. She's played some of the tapes for me. And every time she contacts him, he goes, "Hi, mommy."
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it is the sweetest thing. And we had a gal who, we're all very close to graduates. It's kind of this community. And one of our graduates passed from brain cancer. And so this gal that does the EVP, she said to the gal who passed before she died, she said, "Now let us know when you get to heaven." And she said, fine. So we all got word that she had passed. Let's say it was at noon on a Sunday. Well, at about 3:00 that afternoon, the EVP gal did a session with her and said, "Hey, did you make it okay?" What they agreed was she was going to let them know that she made it to heaven. And you can very clearly, Nicole, hear her in her accent say, "I made it. I'm here. It's amazing." Whatever else she said.
That's awesome.
It was amazing.
Oh my gosh.
So
that's phenomenal.
So I'll hook you up with the gal that does EVPs if you want.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to talk with her. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she's a doll. The other thing is I had Sonia Rinaldi on my show.
Of course, yes.
And she's in, where is she? Brazil, I think.
I think so.
And she does kind of a steam. She'll do, it reminds me of a vaporizer. So she'll do a steam. Like if you got a kid that's got chest congestion, you're running the cold air vaporizer in the bedroom at night. And she's able to project, or spirit is able to project their image in the vapor in the
Yes.
room.
So it's almost like a type of occlumency or scrying, mirror scrying, similar to that. But go on.
I don't know what that means. Translate that for us.
So black mirror scrying or occlumency, you can do it with like a bowl of water, and you can it's staring at the water, or a glass in a mirror, staring into that mirror. It's all about intention, putting your intention out of who you want to speak to. And when you look in there long enough, you can start to see formations of certain spirits, maybe their facial expressions or whatnot. I've only tried it a couple of times, but it's a form of that. That's what it reminds me of that. So
interesting.
Yeah.
For my 40th birthday, I had a whole bunch of girlfriends flying from all over the country, and we spent the weekend in New Orleans.
Ooh.
So this is like 24 years ago. We had a ball. And one of the things that we did was we went to this plantation that was supposedly haunted. It's called the Myrtles.
Oh, yes, Myrtle. I was just going to ask you if it was Myrtles.
It was the Myrtles. So, and this was, I had just started learning woo-woo at this point. I'd been into it for a couple of years because I didn't grow up with this stuff. I learned how to do all this stuff and I teach people how to do it. And so we're in there and I'm not feeling anything. Nobody's seeing anything. It's like 9 of my best girlfriends from all over the country and we were having a ball.
Oh my gosh.
So the story was there's this, as in many antebellum homes, there's this huge vertical mirror when you walk in the front door, because the women wanted to be sure that their dresses were long enough and their ankles weren't showing, because that was, very, very risque and very taboo.
Yes, it was.
In the gentrified society. But the story was that they had to keep replacing the mirror because children's handprints kept showing up on the mirror. So none of us are seeing the handprints, but one of my girlfriends took a picture of it with her camera, because that was before cell phones. She took a picture of it with her camera, Nicole, and when she got the pictures developed, there were handprints, children handprints all over the mirror. What happened with that?
That, you know what? I mean, here goes my analytical, critical mind. I mean, is it possible there were handprints on? Because it's our oils from our hands, right? That imprint on the mirror, right? So is it possible that at the angle that you guys looked at the mirror, you didn't actually physically see those handprints, but yet the camera picked it up, especially if there was maybe a flash? I don't know if she took the picture direct on with or without flash. Direct on. Was there a flash?
I don't remember. Probably not.
Yeah,
because it was daytime.
Right. So that could be, or it could be a situation where, that could be paranormal. So,
because they said they kept having to replace the mirror because these handprints kept
I've heard
showing
that
up.
story before. I also heard that I thought there was a female spirit that was said to appear in it too. Maybe I have it confused with a different location, but I have heard the handprints. So, oh my gosh, it's so fascinating.
It was so much fun. And then the other question I have is, are there research institutes either here in America or abroad? Because I know Europe especially, and I'm sure in Asia too, I'm just not as familiar with it, but I know there's a group called the London Seance Society that's super old.
Very old. Very old.
Is there a department of study in an academic institution like the University of Virginia has what they've got, the near-death experience
NDEs,
department, NDEs. Is there a department in an academic institution anywhere in the world of which you're aware that really studies this? And is there a degree that one can get in this? What do you do? Get a degree in paranormal activity?
Right.
Or what?
I know, right? Good question. So University of Edinburgh is probably, I can't say the best, but it's fully credited in terms of doing scientific types of research. So University of Edinburgh, but there's also other institutions in the US that are credited as well, where you can get like a parapsychological degree with certain types of concentration. So you can get paranormal science, you can get PSI science, you can get just various different classifications and concentrations. I'm actually highly thinking of pursuing a PhD in parapsychology just for my own knowledge and to acquire more knowledge. But University of Virginia, University of Arizona used to have a more of a program. Not they do it used to be called the Sophia Project. I don't know if they're really actively working on that now. But let's see, the Rhine Institute, for example, is well known. The society, right? It's out of Duke University, I believe. So it was Louisa and Ryan and her husband that I believe started it, very much into psi phenomena. So ESP, telepathy, psychic channeling. Let's see what else. The Society for Psychical Research actually was formed in London, I believe, in 1882 as a way to try to disprove some of the fraudulence that occurred during the spiritualist movement. And so it was the first organization to offer a scientific framework to study the paranormal. And it's still active, and they have all kinds of various articles online, and it's very much still active. But yes, Europe is very much into this, very much into it. And even it's even the East Coast is a little, I don't know, because I don't live out there, but I've heard differences. Oh, the East Coast is more conservative than the West and all of that in regards to the paranormal. But I don't know. I see that changing just because so many people are more apt to share their experiences and become really interested in this type of phenomena. I mean, it's so highly infused in our society now. So.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. I think it's been around for forever. It's all throughout the Bible, angels and spirit visits, and certainly King Lear and Dickens. I think probably the most well-known story is A Christmas Carol with the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future that we all see at Christmas time and then on down through the ages. So I believe that it's been around for forever.
Oh, absolutely.
And people just took it as just a natural part of life. And then it's only been in the last 100 years, maybe 150 years, where people were saying, "Oh, you have to prove it to me." We've become more proof-based as a society. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yeah. And that's actually one of the aspects I mention whenever I do a class or a presentation. I will say, look, my aim, my personal aim is not out to prove, because I already know life after death exists. I already know that, other energies and beings are out there. It's just my intent is not to prove it to you. My objective, I guess, is to offer what results or what research I come up with, and then leave that for you to decide. So it's just seeking the unknown and seeking the truth of it all, and trying to figure out the how and why. But then again, are we mortals? This is just a very out in left field thought, but are we mortals supposed to know all of the intricacies that happen once our bodies cease to function and our soul evolves? Are we supposed to know that as mortals, or are we only granted that when it's our turn? I don't know. I think we're in many ways given glimpses of what will happen to us. Like, for example, NDEs, people sharing traits of those NDEs from various ages, cultures, ethnicities. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of elusive aspects to this, and maybe we will discover them all someday. But I think we're on our way to something really good and something really enticing. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but.
Well, my belief is that I agree with you. We're not supposed to know. We're supposed to have the human experience, number one,
Right.
But also these little bits and pieces and snippets of information that we get from spirit, I believe, is to help us not fear the afterlife,
Absolutely.
not fear death.
Yes.
And And that's what my mission really is.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a dead Pope show up and say, you're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies. And I said, I'm not doing that. Because just get on with it. Clement VI, who ended up being in office during the Black Plague,
Oh, wow.
when
Yeah.
2/3 of Europe died. I never heard of a Pope Clement, let alone I knew there was, more than that there was 6 of them or more. So I believe that that's why this information comes out, is to help us, because what Pope Clement communicates to me, his spirit, he is my main spirit guide, is people are so afraid of dying in the afterlife because it's been so bastardized.
Oh, it absolutely
over
has.
the millennia.
Oh my gosh. Well said on
by
that.
religions and cultures and civilizations that were using the fear to control the masses. You need to do what I say, or you're going to go burn in a fiery pit for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
It does.
So,
and
I think that.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think that that's why we get snippets, and why when I am working with a client and we're talking to a deceased loved one, and they're giving us information about certain things, and it just gives them peace and lets them know, okay, my dad really still is around me, and my dad is paying attention to what's happening to me. And even though I can't see him or touch him, I can still communicate with him. And then my goal is to teach them how to communicate with their deceased loved ones themselves, and not have to go through a medium or a psychic.
Exactly.
Because everybody has the ability. I believe everybody comes in with the ability. It's just a matter of developing and enhancing it.
Absolutely. And I've evolved as while I'm still interested highly in paranormal research, I'm also I would say in the last few years, really more or less going down the afterlife study and research, and really getting into spirit communication, study of human consciousness after death, NDEs. It's very fascinating. And for me now, as opposed to when I started this, I was so interested in, I want an EVP, I want a ghost photograph. Now that's still interesting, don't get me wrong, but what's more important to me is the rapport that I can make with the energies I come across, and how that can help surviving families heal from loss and so forth. So it's become more of a personal mission to study all of this, because it's very rewarding when a loved one who is grieving can have that connection with someone dear to them who has passed. So
you hit the nail on the head.
I did,
girl.
right?
You did.
Get it.
I am involved with a group called Helping Parents Heal.
Oh, fantastic!
And it's just as it sounds. It's people who've lost a child, whether that child was a baby or a teenager, or a 90-year-old person lost their 70-year-old child. A child is still a child. And the number one thing that comforts those family members is being able to communicate with their deceased loved one. And it brings so much peace and comfort.
Oh, it does.
That's what I'm all about too. That, and when we know that we're surrounded by angels and the spirits of deceased loved ones and pets as we're transitioning, which, by the way, university-based research corroborates with a 90% of people at the end of life see their deceased loved ones and pets, spirits, either in dreams or visions. 90%, Nicole.
That's pretty high. That's extremely high.
And you talk to any hospice caregiver or any critical caregiver or ER person, somebody that's worked in the emergency department, or most of those people, along with family members, will say, yeah, my mom at the end of her life was talking to her dead grandmother who'd been dead for 80 years or something.
Yep.
Before we thought, well, grandma's just hallucinating. There's nothing hallucinogenic about what grandma's behavior is. Grandma's got one foot in the spirit world and one foot in this world, and she's able to communicate.
Exactly. And that's why the concept of, sorry, I interrupted you there. Sorry about that. The concept of dream hallucinations, with loved ones being so close to physical death, I should say, they're able to be more connected with that other side. And it's like, is it really a hallucination at all? To me, it's just natural.
Yeah.
And I apparently it's a classification in the DSM-5 diagnostic psychiatric handbook now. So go figure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's circle back for a minute between spirits and ghosts.
Sure.
Do you have a definition of what a spirit is, what a ghost is? Are they the same thing? Do they differ in your opinion?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Let's see that. And it's very easy for even veteran researchers like myself to use ghost and spirit interchangeably, but there really is, in my opinion, as well as others as well as my colleagues, there is a difference between the two. So a ghost, also known as an earthbound, is of course the intelligent energy of someone once living, but perhaps that entity, that earthbound entity, isn't able to progress through the ranks of spirithood as easily as someone like spirit. So maybe they're stuck here by choice or involuntarily. Maybe they're attracted to an antique. Maybe there's unfinished business. Maybe they just passed and their family is grieving so hard that it's calling them back. So there's still such a tie to this mortal plane, whereas a spirit, similar to a ghost, can be intelligent, can communicate and all of that. But it's someone who has advanced through spirithood. Maybe the soul has progressed a little bit more than that of an earthbound. So just more highly advanced, I should say, in the spirit world. That's my sort of definition. And it corroborates many others. It might be explained differently, but that's kind of what we're thinking in terms of the two. So
do you find that a ghost and a spirit have a different frequency or vibration? Do they look different when you capture them on film? Do you perceive them that there's a difference between them?
Excellent question. I think for me, in my personal encounters, it's more the emotional frequency. So you might sense, let's say with an earthbound, let's say someone who tragically died a violent death. Maybe it was suicide tragically or a car accident. And you're still, as an empath or a clairsentient, you're still able to sense that anxious sort of emotion around that person. Whereas with a higher evolved spirit, there's just a more calm, more, in my experience, more loving, peaceful sense about them. So it's less of a tie to the mortal world, if that makes sense. In terms of audio or I can't really say that I just by audio alone or just by a photograph that, oh yes, that's a spirit. It's everything combined. Let's say we do capture a photo of someone and we really feel it's a person that we were communicating to, that based on what our intuition is telling us and based on that emotional sense surrounding that entity, okay, maybe that picture is of a spirit, but it's, for me, in my experience, it's more what I'm feeling when I'm communicating and learning about that energy. And it's usually, for me, telling, okay, this entity has more, I can tell more of a tie to the mortal plane, whereas this energy here seems very, very highly advanced. It's almost hard to explain. It really is.
The late Sylvia Brown, who was my God, I guess you call her a psychic medium.
Yeah.
I don't know. She wrote a bunch of books.
I know.
And she said that she could tell the difference between because ghosts didn't touch the ground. Their feet, they were elevated like 2 or 3 feet off of the ground.
I've heard that too.
Which I don't find that to be the case. Here's my take on the difference.
Yeah.
Between spirits and
ghosts I was gonna ask
is, what I get is that, and I've worked with tens of thousands of people at the end of their lives and their family members, and or done instant replays, like in a football game, they'll do an instant replay of the touchdown.
Yeah.
And what I've seen, Nicole, is that everybody goes to heaven. The movie All Dogs Go to Heaven. Well, all people go to heaven too. Same thing.
I agree.
Everybody goes to heaven. And there are some spirits that want to experience what it's like to be a non-physical and go through some of the physical experiences without their body.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in heaven and then they go, I think I'm going to go back for a little bit. And there are lots of schools of thought that most of our spirit stays in heaven, and a fractal of it can be multiple places at the same time, which is what I experience when grandma says, yeah, I'm with all my 85 million grandchildren and children and friends all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for us to understand from our human perspective. Back to your point earlier, I don't think we're supposed to understand it.
I don't either, but you know what? That's so true. It's almost, I forgot to say, the free will choice where they can go and evolve, but yet come back here, whereas earthbounds can't do that. Maybe they can, but we're thinking that they can't do that.
Yeah.
So
in my experience, nobody's earthbound. No spirits are ever earthbound. It's all that spirit, what that spirit wants to explore and experience, whether they be connected to a body and in physical form or whether they're just in non-physical. And I've worked with ghosts throughout the years who seem to be looking for somebody. One of my favorite stories, Nicole, one of my best friends, late best friends, unfortunately, she passed a few years ago.
Sorry.
She said that she was sitting in her living room one night and there was this evil spirit that was coming through her front door, which was really a thick wooden front door. And she got up and there was an umbrella stand next to the front door and one of her son's golf club was in there. And she said she got the golf club and she was going to hit the spirit and say, you are not welcome here. Get out of here. And so I'm doing an instant replay. This was before I knew her. So I'm doing an instant replay of it. And I said, well, first of all, I got the person's name and all of that. But I said the face was distorted because it was coming through this dense wooden door. And it reminded me of the movies when the bank robbers would put pantyhose on their face, to distort their image. So that was number one. But number two, in talking with that spirit, what we found out was my friend's daughter was the reincarnated spirit of this guy's daughter. He told me where he lived, when he lived, what the daughter's name was, and he was searching for his daughter, and he was coming to visit his daughter's spirit, who now had reincarnated as my friend's spirit. Bottom line, my girlfriend, who was just a research wonk, got all of that information corroborated in census documents and genealogy things. It just sounds like you're doing that too. But I think that's a great example of we got them reunited and he went on into the light. Sometimes I'll see ghosts that will go into this big white yellowish plasma wall. And that's what heaven looks like. But sometimes I'll have their loved ones' spirits come get them. Sometimes we'll get the information that they're searching, that they're in search of, get that to them, and that satisfies them. It's really fascinating.
It is.
But they've all transitioned to heaven, and my experience, and come back to explore and experience things in a non-physical way in the earth plane or on the earth plane.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it actually brings me to this. I'm not a big believer in classifying certain sorts of energies. I mean, we do it for the sake of research, but I'm almost with you on that I'm not so sure really, is there any such thing as an earthbound really? That's something that I've pondered over the years. And, for classification purposes, okay, here's a ghost, here's an earthbound, here's a spirit. But the example you gave with your friend, believing that she had something evil, but yet finding out that it was absolutely the opposite. This is happening all the time, where people have fear, maybe they have fear of the unknown. Maybe they got a scratch and they're associating it with malintent, malicious intent and all of that. But that may not be the intent of the spirit or entity as demonstrated in this example. And so it's a good example to use to show that we can be very off in our perceptions. And in reality, what we think is negative and evil is not. And so it reminded me of that. So
it never is. All spirits are pure love. Evil spirit thing is all concocted by religions and cultures to control the masses.
And don't you, it's a big, sorry, but it's a big fat thorn in my side every damn day. And we see this with Hollywood. We see this with entertainment, exploiting the spirit realm, capitalizing on fear sells and all of this. And what it's doing is it's duping many people. And then people like you and I and others come in, and it really saddens me. It really does. So,
yeah. Well, and I'm wondering if that whole earthbound spirit thing is purgatory. It's, where did that come from? Well, it was an explanation of what happens to somebody when they're in purgatory. And then we used to have limbo.
Oh, remember limbo? Yep.
They kind of stopped talking about purgatory and limbo. It just kind of magically went away.
It did.
Which is interesting.
And I'll use it too a couple times, but it's like, it's weird how I'm not even concentrating on using that word. It just comes out.
Yeah. So. Well, I was taught that the babies that weren't baptized went to limbo.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I said, seriously, really? God,
I know.
mean, that just doesn't make any sense. None of it. Interestingly enough, I was talking with a girlfriend this morning, and I was telling her how excited I was to talk with you today. And
likewise.
And we were talking about curses and all of that. And she said when she was in medical school, the first day of medical school, they talked about voodoo medicine.
Yes.
And I said, you are kidding me. And she said, no. And she was in medical school in the 50s when there weren't a lot of women in medicine, 50s and 60s. And so she said, yeah, they talked about how the belief, which goes into the fear, from religions and cultures and all of that. She said that fear went into this whole voodoo medicine thing where if somebody put a curse on you and you believed you were going to die, people would die, or they'd hold a bone over you or something. And I think that goes into the power of our minds.
Absolutely. Right on.
And also the placebo effect.
Yes.
Whereas when new medications are being tested, they always have a way better response with somebody getting a sugar pill. I believe it's 52% of people that got the placebo believe that they were helped by the medicine. And it's always way more effective than the medicine that they're studying.
Oh, yeah.
What do you have to say about the power of the mind?
Oh, absolutely. And then the whole concept of tulpas too.
What's a tulpa?
So it's I think it should. And again, I'm not big on classifications, but I think we need to talk about this more. It's a Tibetan word that means emanation or manifestation, described in it's James Hilton's novel, The Lost Horizon. So the fictional paradise of Shangri-La. So it's the concept of when we give our thoughts so much power, those thoughts can perhaps generate their own life form. And so maybe people that, no offense to people that believe in the concept of demons, no offense at all, but with entertainment and mass media making it sound like ghosts and spirits, everyone in the afterlife is evil and malicious, people may start believing that, and then it creates this sort of tulpified, if you will, life form that is not true. So I think that's something that we need to look at too. Because I'm with you.
Interesting.
I'm with you. I do not believe the spirit world and the afterlife is at all evil. To me, it's the opposite.
No.
It's full of love.
It's all.
So
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that.
It's pure love. And I'll have people say, well, I don't want my mom around me, my mom's spirit, when I'm dying. She was the bitch from hell, mother. I don't want anything to do with her. And I'll say, well, those personality traits stay with the body.
Exactly.
When somebody dies.
Mm-hmm.
And the spirit is pure love. And they'll say, well, what about somebody who was a serial killer or something like that? I'll say that was their human experience.
Yes.
Their spirit was pure love. Do I understand how that works? not all the nuances, but I've been told it a bazillion times from spirit. Is it where I go, Nicole, and maybe you do too, as I go to, is it feasible? And I say, okay, yeah, maybe it is. Maybe I'll find out when I go to heaven.
Right.
And then I'm going to have a bazillion questions going, okay, how's that work? How's that work?
I know. I'll be there right with you on that with all my questions.
But I'm told by just unlimited spirits, you don't even have to ask. You just know all this stuff when you get there. You know it. Let's circle back to entertainment and literature and TV and all of that kind of stuff. Tell me your thoughts on that. And are there any shows or movies that you can think of that accurately portray
Good question.
what you've experienced?
Good question. So I'm going to preface this. I know a lot of people that are on shows, and they're wonderful, wonderful people. Don't get me wrong. I'm speaking just of the show itself and what it portrays. And so, and again, I've been on TV. I've been on national and local shows, but I will only do those types that where I can authentically present myself and my views of the paranormal. So those are the ones that I'll choose to do. I've declined others. But I feel that as long as sensationalism and Hollywood are joining forces to make these shows, these shows are not 100% portraying the afterlife, life after death, and even perhaps other beings correctly or authentically. And I think it's creating this vibe of, the paranormal, the afterlife, even other types of paranormal classifications, cryptozoology, ufology. It's almost cheapening it and exploiting it like it's one big giant amusement park and circus. And it's that doesn't really sit with me too well. And I understand entertainment's great, but is it really great at the expense of someone else? You know, because you are dealing with someone's grandma, deceased grandma or grandpa or mom or dad or whatnot. And so that's the problem I have with it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on it. But there are, I think, some shows, and the ones that stick out for me, Highway to Heaven, for example, is a good, honest example of someone earthbound or that comes back as an angel, perhaps not earthbound. I don't know why I said that, but comes back as an angel, helps people. So good intent, that heartfelt intent. The Ghost Whisperer, I think, is getting close to that as well. Oh gosh, there are others. Touched by an Angel. There are others, and even some modern ones, but that's my issue with television and movies. And it's blending horror with the paranormal, blending horror with the afterlife. I think those are two genres that should not be mixed whatsoever. But again, fear sells, and that's what people want. And it's sad.
Well, like the news, if it bleeds, it leads.
Oh,
I mean, you can have, I had a guest, John Davis, recently on the show, and he said the path that he drives to work, there may be 1,000 cars that are on the road in this 20 miles that he drives or whatever. He said, if there's one bad accident, they're going to report it on the news, but they're not going to report about the 999 other cars that did just fine.
Exactly.
And everybody got to work on time and all of that. So I thought that was a great example.
That's true. I actually know John Davis. He had a very profound NDE, I believe. I think it's the same John Davis you had on. I think maybe.
Yeah, he's the one that did that believes that he was an apostle with Jesus in a past life, and he was John the Beloved, and it talks about that kind of thing. But
cool.
Some of my favorite shows, and I don't watch the horror shows because I'm too visual. I remember those pictures. I don't want that in my head.
Oh, I know.
I loved Bewitched.
Oh, that's
When
funny.
I was a child.
Yes.
That was my favorite show. And I used to, as a child, think, I just want to grow up to be like Samantha Stevens. And now I can do all the stuff that she could do. Right? Number one. Number two, Tim, my husband, and I have just been introduced to The Good Witch, which I think was on one of the networks, and now it's on Netflix, and it's really good. She's an intuitive, and she's a healer, and she's working with her neighbor who's sounds like he's a trauma surgeon, and he and she are going back and forth, but he don't believe in the woo-woo stuff, but she's ending up being right all the time. So it's starting to pique his interest. So
That's
he's starting
good. Yeah, I got to catch that.
to stay.
I have to watch that. I've heard some good reviews. There was a CSI type show. It wasn't CSI, or it wasn't like Law and Order. It was a different one where the female detective was intuitive, and at the end would see the spirit of someone that was murdered. I forget the name of it, but it was really good, and it gives you that. It had that humanistic feel to it at the end, where she connected with the departed, and the departed was able to make peace and go on. I forget the name of it. I think it was on the Bio channel or something like that. It might be on Netflix.
Ghost, and what's the one with Bruce Willis and
Sixth Sense. The Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense.
Yes.
And then Preacher's Wife was really good. And then the classic that everybody watches at Christmas is A Wonderful Life.
Oh, of course. Yes.
That's one of the best there is.
Yes.
As far as movies go. Okay.
I love it.
Let's talk about that there are certain cities that seem to be more haunted than others. And I've heard you reference New York City in particular, and also Savannah. Tell us about that. Why do you say that? I think of Charleston.
Charleston, too. I mean, there are many others. I mean, even San Diego. I mean, here it's my city here in San Diego even. There's so many various explanations or potential explanations from the historical ties, all of the layers of history and what happened there, the amount of people that reside in a certain location. Like, for example, San Diego with all of its different historical layers, the Native American period, the Mexican period, the Spanish period, even all the way to this is a military city too. So we had work done in, World War II and Civil War and all of that, or World War I, sorry, not that, World War I and World War II. So looking at the historical layers, again, other influences are, water. Water is a natural conductor of electricity. So places that are near a lot of water, even train tracks, the type of EMF. So is like in New York City, I mean, you have think of all the electricity in that place, all confined to such an area. Ley lines even. In Southern California has many ley lines, so points of geographical.
Explain what a ley line is.
Yeah, so
explain what a ley line is.
In lay terms, no pun intended, right? It's points of geographical interest that can make maps. So, like from point A to point B, both point A and B are very significant historically, or even spiritually. And you draw a line between those two, and then lines from those two to other points, and so they're points of geographical interest that are said to help with spiritual manifestation or provide the foundation for paranormal types of activity. So if you look at a ley line map, you'll see in Southern California, I mean, there's numerous ley lines running throughout San Diego. I think even New York City has a lot too. But Savannah, just with the history of Savannah, Georgia, I love Savannah. I need to go to Charleston. When I was there, I couldn't make it, and I need to go. So the next time I'm going, I will go. But just all of the history there, I think is just
Charleston. We went there a lot when the kids were little, and we would meet my family from Ohio there, and they have these ghost tours there.
Yes.
And this is 20 years ago, even longer. They'd give these kids this little device that looked like a TV remote control.
Yes. Yeah.
And they'd say, okay, if we're detecting paranormal activity, they'd make the buzzer go off on this thing. And these little boys were just so excited.
That's fun.
And they'd look at me and they'd say, are you seeing anything? Are you feeling anything? I said, oh, yeah, a lot. And they have this 4 corners where there's 4 churches on the corners. And of course, they all have really old cemeteries and stuff like that. So I always think of Charleston with the whole paranormal thing.
Oh, absolutely.
And then right here in Birmingham, there's a state park that's called Old Cahaba, and it was the
Oh,
original state capital, and the foundations of the homes and the buildings are left. And I think it's 300 acres or
oh my
something.
goodness.
And I like to go down there in the spring because the bulbs that were planted, so this is pre-Civil War, the bulbs that were planted come up still in the spring
Wow.
around the foundations of where the houses were and all of that from all of those years ago. But that place is supposed to be one of the most haunted places
Oh
in
my
the
goodness.
country.
I would love to visit
And
it one day just to
so
see
come
it.
down and see me, and I'll take you down there.
Oh my gosh.
And that
Yeah.
would be fun to see what was
I
going
think
on
the
down
South
there.
is very beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
do
very,
too.
very beautiful. And I have family from my dad's mom was from Atlanta, Georgia. So I have some Southern in my family. So
yeah,
and
yeah.
then Italy.
I'm a Yankee. They asked me to make Yankee dressing at Thanksgiving. Everybody makes cornbread dressing down here,
so
and I
good.
I make it out of breadcrumbs and with the spices and stuff.
Love
and so
it.
they'll say,
Love
"Can you
it.
make some of that Yankee dressing?"
That
And
sounds
I'll
good.
say, "Yeah, yeah." So it was funny. A couple more questions. I could talk to you all
I
day,
know.
but a
Me
couple more
too.
questions.
Me too.
You talk about the need to respect the dearly departed.
Yes.
Say a little bit about that.
Basically, it's in that sentence. I think that, even when you're on an investigation or a case study, you're going to get more with that golden rule, the aspect of the golden rule. What you put out, you get back. But it's just, I don't do it because I know it's going to provide better results. I do it from my heart. I want to respect and revere these energies. And it's like you said earlier, someone may have been a bad person in life. Maybe it was a murderer. They're not like that now. And so it's exactly what you said. And so it's something that we need to do more of. But as long as we have the Hollywoodized, fear sells, I think that kind of puts a wrench in it all. But because people are now the ones, I'm going on a tangent here, but the people that are really out to communicate with the departed authentically, they really want to know, what happens when the soul leaves the body upon death and all of that. That's a different psychological viewpoint versus those that are seeing a horror movie and want to go investigate because they just saw the horror movie, and then the respect goes out the window. So it's just something that is vitally important. But then for me personally, it's just I couldn't do it any other way. So,
Can you share with us a case study or a personal experience that felt really profound to you? Perhaps you were able to get a lot of information to corroborate what you were feeling and thinking, and then you were able to validate that with historic documents or some other kind of research.
Yeah, one that comes up for us is the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe. And so if you're in San Diego, if you're familiar with North County, it's in Vista. So Vista is sandwiched, of course, right between Oceanside to the west and San Marcos to the east, give or take. And so we've been researching the Adobe since about 2011. We've been the hosts of the Spirits of the Adobe tours, still on hiatus because of the pandemic. I need to talk with them, but many years there we've spent just doing private. It's been one big case study for us privately, but we also do the tours. But we've taken some of the paranormal evidence. So there's a theory that when electricity was installed in the Adobe walls, sometime in the early 30s, I'm actually going forward here, backtrack before electricity was installed. It's rumored that someone placed remains of an individual in the Adobe walls. And so it was discovered when the electrician installed that electricity, I believe in the late 20s, early 30s, they found skeletal remains of a man that is said to be Juan Gonzalez. So Allie and I, co-host of the tours, co-director of the team, we've worked together at the Adobe many, many times. we went to the Huntington Library in San Marino, California. That is just gorgeous. If you haven't been, please go. But it has all kinds of research pertaining to Cave Johnson Couts. He was one of the owners of the building. And we found out and were able to verify through electronic voice phenomena and ITC that there was an underground cellar on the property. So, and that's because we would get results of that would suggest that some sort of underground cellar, besides even what the docents told us. And so we were there at the Huntington Library doing all this research, and we were able to corroborate that and other historical points about the property. Another example, and this isn't historical, this was a private residence, and it was a woman that she lives in Fallbrook, and her house had a large house, and she rented it out as a nursing sort of home for people. So there were a couple ladies there, one in particular who lost her husband. And so the reason the homeowner contacted us is because she had these IR security cameras, of course, and she started seeing these orbs on camera, which we obviously explained away as dust. But yet the woman who lost her husband was having experiences. So we went in, got to know her, got to know a little bit about her experiences, and we did a communication session overnight, different types of EVP and even spirit box sessions. And we were able to apparently capture this woman's husband's voice, letting her know that he loves her very much. So we captured that, let her hear it, and she literally started breaking down. She's like, that's him. No doubt. I recognize his voice. And so it's those types of studies or investigations that have meaning, not just going in and capturing evidence, but when you can really help someone that is going through a grief or help them come into terms with what they're dealing with, those are the very meaningful types of projects that we can work on. So.
Well, it's almost like it's a, for lack of a better word, it's a mission for you to help comfort people.
Yes.
And it's something obviously that you're being led to do because you're not getting paid to do it, but it's something that you're able to provide comfort for people. So God bless you for doing that work.
Yes, it is
and
a
helping
calling.
to comfort
really,
people.
Sorry, my chair isn't that comfortable today. I keep moving, but it is a calling. It is a calling. And of course, I charge for presentations and stuff like that, but just going in, speaking of investigations, we don't usually charge for that, but it is rewarding. It really is intrinsically rewarding. So
terrific. Question I ask everybody that's on the show: why do you think we incarnate?
I'm just going to answer this with, I think the human soul is on various missions, and this life is the next mission. And when we go on and pass from this life, we'll go on to a next, and until we reach our soul's ultimate purpose and mission. That's my concise answer on that. So.
Great answer. How can people learn more about you and your work?
Oh, sure. So I'm on social media, Facebook. I have different Facebook pages. My main one is at Nicole D. Strickland, and then Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I don't use it a lot though, but our team's acronym. So SDPRS Nicole. That's the handle there. Instagram, author Nicole Strickland, and then my websites, authornicolestrickland.com. San Diego Paranormal Research.com, and then spiritedqueenmary.com, because I do a lot of research on the Queen Mary and such. So, but
we didn't even get to the Queen Mary.
I know, right? That's my second home. Oh my gosh.
I've been on the Queen. Okay.
Have you
got another couple of minutes?
Oh,
multiple times.
Okay.
Yeah. The Queen Mary, you guys, for those of you that aren't aware, well, you explain it. It's in Long Beach, California, but
you can if you want.
Okay. Well, the Queen Mary was an ocean liner that was one of kind of like the class of the Titanic and all of that. Very opulent. People would travel it from usually England, I think, primarily to the US, and it would take weeks for them to cross. And so now it's been retired and it's in Long Beach. harbor, really.
Yeah.
And so talk about the Queen Mary just for a few
for a
minutes. I'm
few
sorry to
minutes.
keep you long, but
Oh, no,
we got
not
to
at
talk
all.
about the Queen
Oh,
Mary.
absolutely. We could do a whole episode devoted to that if you want to. It's up to you. But yeah, so the Queen Mary, again, it wasn't in my plans for this, but yet here we are. I was first introduced to the ship in the year 2000 in the backseat of a car on spring break. And I said to myself, oh, okay, I will be back here someday. That day came in 2005. Ever since then, it's hard to put this in words. I've written 3 books about the ship, which are sold aboard, by the way, as well as online. But I try to talk about this and get the point across in my books, but it's hard. The first time I stepped aboard, it was an instantaneous connection to the ship, a soul connection. I felt at home. I felt at peace. Everything felt familiar to me. So it's been suggested many times. I've even wondered this myself. Past life, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I do feel like I do have one with the Titanic, so that's another story. But just anyways, ever since then, I've been very active in researching the Queen Mary's history, very rich historical tapestry, as well as the paranormal phenomena. And the paranormal phenomenon, I'm trying to condense this. I believe the ship is sentient, and then she has her resident spirits. So there's this duality that plays between the ship being one giant spirit and then her resident spirits and those that come through. A beautiful, beautiful spiritual phenomena there. It's an amazing location, and it's been an ongoing case study for me for many years, and just recently reopened in June. So if you haven't been, now's your time. So it's really lovely. I love it.
Next time I'm in LA, I'll let you know. Maybe I can meet
Please
you there.
do.
That would be fun.
Yeah, we could get lunch or something. Yeah, that'd be great.
And we could do that.
Sounds
that
good.
would be terrific. One of my favorite books is The Glass Ocean by Karen White.
Oh, yeah.
Have you read that?
I have not.
It's about the
but I've heard great
Lusitania.
things.
Oh, it's fabulous. She's been a guest on the show too, Karen White, she's a historic novelist, and she always has ghosts in her books or spirits or a combination of the two. And she's really just such a delight. And I read that book twice. It is one of my all-time favorite books, and it's about the Lusitania.
The Lusitania has such a sad, sad, sad story. It's so sad. And that could be one of the reasons I haven't read it, but I've heard nothing but greatness with that book. So I should just read it. I need to read it. But yeah, what a sad story. Oh, so heartbreaking.
Well, thank you again for taking the time to join us. What a fun, far-ranging conversation here that we're going to release on Halloween.
Perfect.
And what a fascinating woman you are. And
likewise.
And continued success in all of your endeavors. I hope to stay in touch.
Yes.
And let's see what we can do together. That would be a fun project.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah, I love collabing especially with people who have like-minded views and stuff. It makes it easier. So yeah, let's do that. We should totally do that.
Exactly. Okay.
Awesome.
All righty. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah. And from San Diego, too, where Nicole is. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow Julie on Instagram and YouTube at Ask Julie Ryan, and like her on Facebook at Ask Julie Ryan. To schedule an appointment or submit a question, please visit AskJulieRyan.com.
This show is for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. Please contact a licensed professional. The Ask Julie Ryan Show, Julie Ryan and all parties involved in producing, recording, and distributing it assume no responsibility for listeners' actions based on any information heard on this or any Ask Julie Ryan shows or podcasts.